She's everything you wanted. Beautiful, intelligent, the kind of woman who turns heads when she walks into a room. And somehow, against all odds, she chose you. For the first few weeks, everything feels perfect. The chemistry is electric, the connection feels real, and you start believing you might have finally found something special. Then it starts. The subtle pulling away, the decreased responsiveness to your texts, the way her eyes seem to wander when you're out together. You feel her slipping away, and your first instinct is to hold on tighter. You text more frequently, plan more elaborate dates, become more available and accommodating. But the tighter you hold on, the further she drifts. Soon, you're competing with other men for her attention, dealing with manufactured drama and playing games you don't understand. You wonder how you went from being chosen to being one of many options fighting for scraps of her time. Today, I'm going to reveal the fundamental framework that allows you to keep attractive women without manipulation, constant competition, or exhausting performance. Because the men who maintain relationships with desirable women aren't using tricks or strategies, they're operating from 3 core principles that make losing her literally impossible. The primary reason men lose attractive women is that they approach relationships from desperation rather than choice. This scarcity mindset creates behaviors that repel the very women they're trying to keep, regardless of how attracted she was initially. Scarcity manifests in ways that men don't recognize as problematic. You become overly available because you're afraid that space might give her room to lose interest. You avoid conflict because you believe that disagreement might drive her away. You constantly try to add value because you fear that your natural presence isn't enough. This desperate energy is toxic to attraction because it communicates that you don't believe you deserve her interest. When you operate from fear of loss, she senses that desperation and begins to question whether she made the right choice. Your insecurity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The spiral accelerates because each desperate behavior generates more distance from her, which triggers more panic-based responses from you. You text more when she responds less. You become more accommodating when she becomes more demanding. You try harder when she invests less. Attractive women are particularly sensitive to this energy because they encounter it constantly from men who are intimidated by their desirability. They can immediately distinguish between men who choose to be with them and men who desperately need to be with them. The cruel irony is that the more you need her to validate your worth, the less valuable you become in her eyes. The hungrier you appear for her approval, the less appetizing you become as a partner. Scarcity doesn't just make you less attractive, it makes you fundamentally repulsive. The master skill that separates men who keep desirable women from men who lose them is outcome independence. The ability to invest fully in the relationship while remaining psychologically unattached to specific results. This paradox creates genuine abundance mindset. Non-attachment doesn't mean not caring. It means caring without clinging. It means investing without desperation. It means being present without being needy. You can love her deeply while remaining emotionally independent of whether she chooses to stay. This psychological position is incredibly attractive because it demonstrates emotional stability that quality women seek in partners. When you're not desperately attached to keeping her, she doesn't feel the pressure that comes from being someone's primary source of validation and self-worth. Non-attachment also allows you to make decisions based on what's best for the relationship rather than what's most likely to prevent her from leaving. You can address problems honestly, maintain boundaries consistently, and express your authentic self without constant fear that authenticity might cost you the relationship. The paradox works because when you're not attached to keeping her, you naturally behave in ways that make her want to stay. Your confidence isn't dependent on her approval, so she doesn't feel burdened by responsibility for maintaining your self-esteem. Your happiness isn't contingent on her behavior, so she doesn't feel controlled by your emotional needs. Women are drawn to men who enhance their lives rather than depending on them for basic psychological functioning. Non-attachment signals that you're psychologically complete and choosing to share your completeness rather than seeking completion through her. Keeping quality women without drama requires mastering 3 fundamental areas that create what could be called the complete man. These aren't pick-up techniques or manipulation strategies. They're foundational elements that make you naturally attractive and impossible to replace. The first pillar is sustainable attraction, the ability to maintain romantic and sexual tension over extended periods without constant effort or artificial stimulation. Most men exhaust themselves trying to be on all the time, creating unsustainable performance pressure that eventually collapses. The second pillar is emotional security, providing the psychological safety that allows her to be vulnerable, authentic, and fully present in the relationship. This isn't about being physically protective, it's about creating emotional conditions where she can lower her guard completely. The third pillar is masculine leadership, bringing her into your world rather than adapting yourself to fit into hers. This involves having a compelling vision for your life that she wants to participate in, rather than trying to become part of whatever she has planned. These three pillars work synergistically to create relationships that feel natural rather than forced. When all three are present, she naturally becomes more invested, more loyal, and more attracted over time rather than less. The relationship improves rather than deteriorates with familiarity. Most men focus on only one pillar while neglecting the others, creating imbalanced dynamics that eventually fail. Physical attraction without emotional security leads to instability. Security without leadership leads to boredom. Leadership without sustained attraction leads to platonic partnerships. The first pillar requires understanding that romantic and sexual chemistry cannot be maintained through constant contact and availability. Attraction needs space to breathe, mystery to explore, and anticipation to build between interactions. Most men make the critical error of trying to maximize time together, believing that more contact creates stronger bonds. But attraction operates more like a fire than a flood. It needs oxygen to burn brightly. Constant contact smothers the very chemistry you're trying to maintain. Sustainable attraction involves creating natural rhythms of connection and separation that keep the relationship feeling fresh rather than routine. This isn't about artificial unavailability. It's about having a life compelling enough that you're not always accessible. The architecture also requires maintaining your individual identity, rather than merging completely into couplehood. She fell for the man you were when you were living your own life, pursuing your own goals, and maintaining your own interests. Abandoning these elements to focus entirely on the relationship eliminates the very qualities that attracted her initially. Sustainable attraction means keeping some mystery alive rather than becoming completely predictable. This doesn't mean being secretive or dishonest. It means maintaining aspects of your personality, interests, and activities that she continues to discover over time. The goal is creating anticipation for your presence rather than taking your presence for granted. When she's genuinely excited to see you because your interactions feel special rather than routine, attraction naturally sustains itself without artificial stimulation. The second pillar involves creating psychological conditions where she feels completely safe to be vulnerable, authentic, and fully herself without fear of judgment, rejection, or emotional volatility from you. Security isn't about being physically protective, financially successful, or socially dominant. It's about emotional consistency, reliable character, and the kind of psychological stability that allows her to relax completely when she's with you. This security emerges from having a clear vision for your life that isn't dependent on her behavior or choices. When your purpose, goals, and sense of self are firmly established independent of the relationship, she doesn't feel responsible for maintaining your emotional stability. Women test for security constantly through various means: emotional outbursts, unreasonable demands, manufactured conflicts, or sudden withdrawal. These tests aren't conscious manipulation. They're instinctual attempts to discover whether you'll remain stable under pressure. Failing these tests by becoming reactive, defensive, or desperate immediately destroys the security she needs to feel safe in the relationship. Passing them by, remaining calm, consistent, and grounded reinforces her confidence in your stability. The security foundation also requires having your own emotional regulation skills rather than depending on her to manage your moods, validate your decisions, or provide your primary source of happiness and fulfillment. If you're beginning to understand how these three pillars work together to create relationships that strengthen over time rather than deteriorating through familiarity, subscribe and hit that notification bell. What I'm teaching today about natural relationship retention could transform how you approach connections with desirable women. The third pillar involves creating a compelling vision for your life that she wants to participate in, rather than trying to fit yourself into her existing plans and priorities. Leadership isn't about dominance, control, or making all the decisions. It's about having clear direction in your own life that naturally attracts others who want to journey in a similar direction. She chooses to follow because she's inspired by where you're going, not because she's been forced to comply. This leadership requires knowing what you want from life beyond just having a relationship with her. You need goals, purposes, and visions that exist independently of romantic success, and that would continue to drive you even if she weren't in your life. The leadership framework also involves taking responsibility for the overall emotional tone and direction of the relationship. You set the standard for how conflicts are resolved, how challenges are addressed, and how the partnership grows and evolves over time. Masculine leadership means making decisions confidently, rather than constantly seeking her approval or trying to please her through endless accommodation. You consider her input and preferences, but you're capable of making choices and taking responsibility for outcomes. This leadership quality is particularly attractive to quality women because they encounter so many men who either try to control them through dominance or defer to them through submission. True leadership offers a third option: partnership with someone who has clear direction. One of the biggest myths that keeps men secure with desirable women is the belief that her attractiveness automatically gives her unlimited options. This belief creates scarcity mindset that becomes self-defeating through the insecure behaviors it generates. The reality is that most men, regardless of their external attractiveness or success, fail to provide the three pillars that quality women actually want. She might have abundant attention, but abundant quality options are much rarer than most men imagine. Attractive women are constantly approached by men who are intimidated by their desirability, who try too hard to impress them, who become desperate and needy once they gain access, or who lack the emotional stability to maintain attraction over time. The abundance she experiences is primarily abundance of low-quality interactions with men who either put her on a pedestal or try to tear her down. Men who can provide sustainable attraction, genuine security, and authentic leadership are actually quite scarce. Understanding this reality allows you to compete in a much smaller, more select group, rather than feeling like you're competing with every man who finds her attractive. Most of your perceived competition eliminates itself through scarcity-based behaviors. When you operate from the three pillars, you're not just another option among many. You're providing something that most men simply cannot provide, regardless of their physical attractiveness, financial success, or social status. The most difficult aspect of implementing the three-pillar framework is that all three must be developed simultaneously, rather than sequentially. Strength in one area cannot compensate for weakness in others when dealing with women who have multiple options. Many men excel at attraction but lack security, creating relationships that are passionate but unstable. Others provide excellent security but no leadership, resulting in safe but boring partnerships. Some have strong leadership but lose attraction over time, leading to respectful but platonic connections. The integration challenge requires honest self-assessment about which pillar represents your greatest weakness, then systematically developing that area while maintaining strength in others. This development work must happen largely outside the relationship, rather than using the relationship as your training ground. Integration also requires understanding how the pillars reinforce each other. Strong leadership makes attraction easier to maintain. Solid security makes leadership more attractive. Sustainable attraction makes security feel more valuable. The men who successfully integrate all three pillars discover that keeping quality women becomes natural because they're providing exactly what these women are looking for but rarely finding in their dating experiences. Overcoming scarcity mindset requires developing genuine alternatives to any specific woman, rather than trying to convince yourself that you don't need her when you actually do. Real abundance comes from real options, not from positive thinking about imaginary options. This means continuing to develop yourself, maintain social connections, pursue meaningful goals, and remain attractive to other women even when you're in a relationship. You're not actively pursuing other women, but you're not allowing yourself to become completely dependent on one woman either. Scarcity elimination also involves developing internal sources of validation, purpose, and happiness that don't depend on her behavior, choices, or presence in your life. You enhance your life by adding her to it rather than expecting her to complete your life by being in it. The strategy requires accepting that any individual woman, no matter how amazing, is replaceable in the sense that you could create a fulfilling life with someone else if necessary. This doesn't diminish your appreciation for her, it eliminates your desperation to keep her. When you genuinely believe that losing her would be disappointing but not devastating, you naturally behave in ways that make losing her far less likely. Your security in yourself creates security in the relationship. Operating from the three-pillar framework automatically filters for women who are capable of appreciating and reciprocating quality treatment. Women who are primarily attracted to drama or chaos will naturally lose interest when you provide stability and consistency. This filtering process is actually beneficial because it eliminates women who would create ongoing problems regardless of how well you implement the framework. Some women are attracted to dysfunction and will create it even in healthy relationships. The women who are drawn to sustainable attraction, emotional security, and masculine leadership are those capable of partnerships based on mutual respect and genuine compatibility. These are the women worth keeping, and they're the ones most likely to stay when you provide these elements consistently. The natural selection also works in reverse. Women who stay and become more invested over time are revealing their capacity for healthy relationships. Their positive response to your healthy behavior is a good indicator of their relationship potential. This selection process means that success with the framework indicates compatibility with women who can actually provide the kind of partnership that makes relationships fulfilling rather than exhausting. The power of the three-pillar framework multiplies exponentially when applied consistently over time rather than sporadically when you remember to implement it. Most men attempt these principles in bursts of motivation, then revert to old patterns when challenges arise or when the novelty wears off. Consistency in providing sustainable attraction means maintaining your individual pursuits, interests, and social connections even when the relationship is going well. Many men abandon these elements once they feel secure, not realizing that these very elements created the security they're now taking for granted. Consistency and emotional security requires remaining stable through her testing phases, mood fluctuations, and the inevitable challenges that arise in any relationship. This doesn't mean being emotionally flat or unresponsive. It means being predictably grounded while still being emotionally engaged and present. Consistency in masculine leadership involves maintaining your vision and direction even when she questions your choices, suggests alternative paths, or experiences temporary doubts about your decisions. Leadership isn't about being inflexible. It's about being reliably principled in your approach to life and relationships. The multiplier effect occurs because women need time to trust that your positive qualities are genuine rather than temporary performance. When you demonstrate the three pillars consistently across various situations and extended timeframes, she begins to rely on these qualities as fundamental aspects of your character rather than situational behaviors. This reliability becomes increasingly valuable as she compares you to other men who provide sporadic excellence, followed by disappointing reversions to neediness, instability, or passivity. Your consistency makes you irreplaceable, because she knows she can count on you to show up as the same quality man regardless of circumstances. The three-pillar framework requires different emphasis and application, depending on which phase of the relationship you're navigating. Understanding these phase-specific applications prevents you from using the wrong approach at the wrong time, which can undermine even perfect execution. During the initial attraction phase, sustainable attraction takes precedence because you're establishing the foundation of romantic and sexual interest. This doesn't mean neglecting security and leadership, but it means ensuring that mystery, anticipation, and chemistry remain primary focus areas while these other elements develop naturally. As the relationship progresses into deeper connection phases, emotional security becomes more critical because she's beginning to consider you as a potential partner. This is when your consistency, reliability, and emotional stability are being evaluated most rigorously through both conscious observation and unconscious testing. In established relationship phases, masculine leadership becomes the dominant pillar because she's now looking for evidence that you can guide a partnership toward meaningful goals and handle the complexities that arise in committed relationships. Your vision, decision-making capabilities, and ability to navigate challenges become primary evaluation criteria. The deployment strategy also requires understanding that regression in any pillar during later phases can be more damaging than initial weakness in that area. Once she's experienced your full capability in providing attraction, security, and leadership, Any significant decline in these areas feels like deception or deterioration rather than normal variation. Advanced deployment involves seamlessly transitioning emphasis between pillars based on her current needs and the relationship's current challenges without abandoning any pillar entirely. This dynamic responsiveness is what separates masters of the framework from those who apply it mechanically. Expert-level implementation requires developing calibration skills that allow you to adjust your approach based on her personality type, attachment style, life circumstances, and relationship history. Not all women respond identically to the same application of these principles. Some women require more emphasis on attraction maintenance due to their personality traits or past experiences with boring relationships. Others need additional security focus because of trust issues or anxious attachment patterns. Still, others respond most strongly to leadership because they've previously dated passive men who provided no direction. Calibration mastery involves reading her responses to your implementation of each pillar and adjusting your emphasis accordingly without abandoning your authentic expression of these qualities. You're not becoming someone different. You're expressing different aspects of your authentic self more prominently based on what serves the relationship best. This calibration also extends to timing, knowing when she needs more space to feel attraction, when she needs more presence to feel secure, and when she needs more direction to feel inspired. These needs fluctuate based on her stress levels, life challenges, and emotional cycles. Advanced calibration includes understanding how your own strengths and weaknesses in each pillar interact with her personality and needs. If you're naturally strong in leadership but weaker in attraction maintenance, you'll need to work harder on the attraction pillar when dating women who highly value romantic excitement. The mastery level involves making these calibrations unconsciously through developed intuition, rather than consciously analysing every interaction. You begin to feel what she needs and respond appropriately without overthinking the process. Understanding how men typically fail when implementing this framework prevents you from making the same mistakes that undermine otherwise solid efforts. These failures usually stem from misunderstanding the principles rather than inability to execute them properly. The most common failure is treating the pillars as manipulation techniques rather than authentic self-development areas. When you try to fake sustainable attraction through artificial scarcity, pretend security through false confidence, or perform leadership through controlling behavior, women sense the inauthentic energy and lose trust in your character. Another frequent failure involves focusing exclusively on one pillar while completely neglecting others. Men often become obsessed with maintaining attraction through constant mystery and unavailability, while providing no security or leadership, creating relationships that feel exciting but unstable and directionless. Some men fail by implementing the framework mechanically, without emotional intelligence or situational awareness. They follow the principles rigidly regardless of context, making their behavior feel calculated rather than natural, which destroys the very authenticity that makes these principles effective. Implementation failures also occur when men expect immediate results and abandon the framework when they don't see instant improvements. These principles work through compound effects over time rather than immediate dramatic changes, requiring patience and persistence to see full benefits. The most subtle failure involves using the framework to avoid personal growth rather than facilitate it. Some men use these principles as techniques to manage relationships without doing the internal work necessary to become the kind of man who naturally embodies these qualities. The fundamental truth about keeping quality women is that retention becomes their choice, rather than your challenge when you provide sustainable attraction, emotional security, and masculine leadership consistently. You're not trying to trick her into staying. You're becoming worth staying for. This approach eliminates the need for manipulation or artificial strategies because you're addressing the core psychological needs that drive female loyalty and commitment. The three-pillar framework works because it addresses the complete spectrum of what quality women actually want in partnerships. Women don't leave men who provide all three pillars consistently because finding this combination is extremely rare. When they encounter it, they recognize its value and work to maintain access to it, rather than taking it for granted. Attractive women are not actually harder to keep than any other women. They're just more selective about which men are worth keeping. When you become one of those men, retention becomes automatic rather than forced. Your competition isn't other attractive men. Your competition is other men who understand and implement these three pillars. That competition is much smaller than you imagine, which is why mastering this framework is so powerful. The men who successfully implement all three pillars discover that their biggest challenge shifts from trying to keep women to choosing which women deserve their investment. This abundance is the natural result of becoming genuinely valuable rather than trying to appear valuable. Share this video with any man who's tired of losing quality women through scarcity-based behavior and wants to understand that real relationship security comes from being genuinely worth staying with, rather than desperately trying to prevent leaving.